Hi, this is Bill Walton. Welcome to the show. Well, 2020 is a year I think we can all agree has been among the most catastrophic in history. I'm sure there are worse, like maybe the day Rome fell or 1789 when they pulled out the guillotine in Paris, but maybe even those were not as bad as 2020. But I am a silver lining guy. I always see sort of the glass half full, and while we focus on the distancing and the masks and the a lot of the destruction of small business, there are a lot of positive things that can be taken from what we've all gone through, and I think these are positive things that we ought to reflect on as we go into 2021, which I expect will be a better year, a different year, but better. And I wanted to talk with the team that I work with to help make this show. Brian McNichol, Frank Wazeter, Alona Wazeter, and Rich McFadden, because we got to kicking this around earlier in the week, and they had a lot of good ideas, and I thought we'd dive right into those. But I guess before I do that, I just found out when we were getting ready to do this, Brian had COVID this year, and so did Frank and Alona. And so, as I joked, I can't wait to get it next, so I can be a member of the new club of the in guys. So, Frank, why don't you kick off with what your takeaway is, and what your year's been like, and what you see could be a positive going forward.
Yeah, well, I think number one with this year is that you see the indomitability of the human spirit. You see that although a bunch of businesses have gone out of businesses, that you've seen record numbers of new businesses coming about. So people, are kind of taking the chance to engage in their freedom and build things up, and to say, hey, I got nothing left to lose. Let's get rolling with that idea. It's a new opportunity rather than a bad thing.
Rich?
I would probably say that even though we are being forced into a lot of situations that we don't like right now, that coming out on the other side, we're going to end up with some really cool advances. And specifically, I'm watching my kids with their virtual learning. The teachers hate it. The school systems hate it. The students definitely hate it. The parents definitely hate it. And it's hard. And our kids are being used as guinea pigs out of necessity. But you know what? In 3-4 years, they're going to figure this thing out. And it's going to be a tool that provides people with educational opportunities that they've never had. It's going to be a tool that provides kids with experience that they would not have had. And it's going to make them more resourceful, and it's going to teach them how to figure things out. And while it just stinks for everybody right now, I think in the end, for most people, they're going to come out on the other side and really have some tools that they didn't have in their tool bag before. Some will be hurt by it, but I think in the main, we're going to end up ahead of where we were.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're all ultimately very resilient.
Yeah.
Alona, what you had an interesting take on families.
As Rich was saying, although we're forced to stay in, so many people actually stayed out for the first time, maybe in years. Going out on the bike trails and hiking and enjoying the weather with their families, with their kids. I mean, every time we'll go out and take a hike, it's packed with people. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people are missing out on in their lives, is to actually pause and look around and see the beauty in the world. That's one of the biggest things throughout the summer. And now that we're in holiday season, people are joining their families through Zoom. I mean, Zoom been around along Skype, along WhatsApp for years now, but now it actually got triggered that, hey, we actually can have a conversation with the whole entire family on Christmas Day through Zoom. And all of a sudden we have the whole entire family joining and, reuniting.
Yeah, I guess I've gotten my 1-year-old granddaughter is pretty cute on Zoom. I think we should get her on YouTube pretty soon. But I think all grandparents with 1-year-olds think that is probably true. Brian, why don't you jump in with the intro, and then we're just going to play jazz and people weigh in on various aspects of what could turn out to be good about this year.
Okay, well, one of the things that sort of goes to what Elena was saying is golf has made a huge comeback this year. Golf was really on the ropes in terms of people belonging to golf courses, paying greens fees, buying equipment and so forth. But the COVID, golf was one of the first sports we were allowed to go do. In fact, my golf course here by me never shut down. So, you had all, that was a sport that we could go play that was pretty socially distanced. And like you were saying, outside, enjoying the weather, and the courses were packed, the ones that stayed open. Other thing is like medical advances. We have, telemedicine now is going to be a lot bigger part of our lives and should have been a long time ago. One of the things that happened under this is a lot of regulations got moved out of the way. People like the FDA and so forth got, they got kind of a kick in the butt, so to speak, to like speed up, do things quicker. Medical machines, like it became, we had a need to measure people's temperature because now, there was a study out yesterday that that there's no asymptomatic transmission, or essentially no asymptomatic transmission. If you're not showing symptoms, you cannot give coronavirus to anyone, which means these temperature checks become real important. And now you've had a lot of innovation. The temperature check started out as, using an old-fashioned thermometer, and then we got the electric things that you go across your forehead. And now there's these things you just walk up and stand in front of them and they point something at your forehead and they know your temperature and you barely stop walking. So, that's a pretty exciting things, and it's a pretty cool way around a pretty serious problem.
So I can see there's going to be a big market in portable and these thermometers. So the economist in me, the finance guy, thinks, okay, well, then what I'm hearing is that there are a lot of winners. There are a lot of industries that are big winners, and we're reading a lot about the losers, which are the small businesses, the restaurants, and the service businesses, and those are undeniably getting clobbered. But that people are figuring out other things to do, and maybe even the restaurant owners may be figuring out new things to do when the curtain lifts. Frank, you mentioned something about entrepreneurship. Thoughts?
Yeah. So, what you've seen is you've seen people that have been forced to adapt and to evolve. They say like suffering is the mother of all innovation, and especially in the digital realm, on a small business level, like the ones that are thriving and the ones that have gone through and the ones that have kind of come through that are now expanding their business in ways that are profoundly different than the way they were doing, business a year ago. Whether that's, online deliveries, whether that's, doing more meetings digitally or remotely, and that when you get this momentum to catch back up as we come out of this thing, that's not going to go away. And they're going to continuously expand through that.
Well, yeah, you mentioned the freedom word. Once you've had your business crushed, you have freedom. We joke, that's the old Chris Christopherson line in his song, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose.
That's right.
But, as an entrepreneur myself, you tend to get crushed doing certain things, but you learn a lot from it. And, maybe you're in a restaurant, you had a good menu, but not a great location. Well, now with everything empty, there are going to be a lot of great new locations available. So, I don't know.
Probably pretty cheap rent too, because they're like, hey, come back.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, Rich, you mentioned digital media. What's happening there?
Yeah, it's not a bad year to be creating content for people to consume when they're stuck at home or out walking or not in bars, not in restaurants. They're looking for something to engage in, and digital content, podcasts, radio, have all had a good year. It's been tough on some people, but people are, they don't just want to sit around. They want to be doing something. And when they're walking, when they're exercising, when they're cooking, when they're out with the dog, when they're golfing, they're going to wear some earbuds and be listening to some content to keep them entertained and informed as to what's going on in the world around them. And so podcasts, talk podcasts, the spoken word, have done really well. And so being in that business, we've seen a nice boost this year. And the talk radio side broadcast is strong, very strong this year. So it's people are looking for information and they're finding new ways to get it. And we've been able to deliver it to them. And it's been a good year for it.
That's a Radio America. You know, you and I have talked about this before. There's this word, there's this big word I learned actually just this morning when I was thinking about this show, called prosody, which is where there are people who believe, I believe, that the ear, the fastest, most effective way to communicate is through the ear, through speaking. And of course, you know, you think about Shakespeare, that was written for the ear and the audience, and sermons didn't used to be written down; they were just delivered to an audience. And I think that this lousy pandemic has caused people to move towards that. I think it could be that. I think that's a great outcome.
I think it's been a bonanza for cooking. You know, grocery store sales are up almost 30%.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, and cookbooks, things like that are flying off the shelves.
The cooking channels, the cooking apps, they're all
apps
killing it. Yeah.
I mean, the modern cookbook. I don't know too many people that like flip the old pages anymore, but yeah, that's, and like, so I think we're getting better food out of it because people are saying, you know, because I know personally, I do the cooking around here, and you know, it's been more opportunity to like take your time and make something good as opposed to just throwing something together. So I think you
know, Brian, you had mentioned a little while ago that golf has made a resurgence.
Yeah.
And it's funny, you look over my shoulder, I'm a horrible guitar player, but really played it all my life. And guitar gods, your Eric Claptons, your Stevie Ray Vaughns, all these guys have just kind of waned over the past decade and a half. And where guitar is really not a big part of music, pop music anymore. Right. Well, let me tell you something. There are millions and millions of kids sitting at home in front of YouTube learning how to play the guitar this year.
Hey,
it's an explosion that is not going to go away for the next generation or two.
And I'll tell you what, it's not just kids. Like I know I have 3 women friends who are all 50 or over who have taken up guitar and really gotten passionate about it and gotten pretty good at it.
Yeah, which is great. But that's not going to keep it around for another generation. The thing that, and you're right, that's absolutely has happened. But the thing I'm so excited to see is 15-year-olds and 13-year-olds discovering the guitar so that it's around for, I mean, because, you know, think about it. What would rock and roll be without guitar? So what would rock and roll be in the next 50 years without any kids learning how to play guitar? So I'm pleased to see that, really pleased.
It's had a comeback of that kind of music, right? You know, there's people are listening to the old, you know, like at the school where I coach, there's a rock and roll club and where they're like studying Led Zeppelin and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I can help you with that.
Wait. Where is that? Where is that school, Brian? I think I may want to audit that class.
Alexandria. Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty close.
Well, another upside I will tell you is online music. So all of these acts that I used to go see when I went to Jazz Fest in New Orleans every year, and all the concerts that I've seen over my life, they're now performing on Facebook and on websites. And so I can see all the bands that I love to go see any Friday or Saturday night right on my computer screen, whereas before I would have to travel somewhere to New Orleans or Nashville and go see them or wait for them to come here. Now I can just see when their next online concert is. So that's really been a neat thing this year to be able to enjoy.
There were a lot of people and a lot of like pop stars and rock stars that are famous that would actually hop on, Facebook Live and whatnot and just do their concert.
They had to figure it out just like we did. And one of the things that
Yep.
they did is neat is, and the ones who've really done this right and figured it out, they created a tip jar. So you could tip them through YouTube chats or through PayPal or Venmo. And they've figured out how to make a living virtually, and good for them. It's neat.
I don't want to be the skunk in the party, but I will a little bit. I mean, we're making it sound like the best thing that ever happened is this pandemic and the lockdown.
Yeah.
And I absolutely agree. We're not going to go back to an old normal. We're going to go forward to a new normal, and it'll have all these different aspects, and that's going to be a very good thing. But what do you think have been the social, the psychological costs of people walking around with masks and shoving people off to be 6 feet away?
I don't think masks are ever going away. I think that you will have people that are scared to death to ever not wear a mask again.
Oh, my.
And so I think that there's going to be a small percentage of people that still wear them. So, but I don't want to focus on the downs, but yeah, I think masks are here to stay for a small percentage of the population.
Well, as long as it's a small percentage and it's voluntary, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
But it's the mandatory part that I want to get us free of. Lona, what do you think of the social cost of people wearing masks? I mean, you're from where'd you grow up? Which country?
Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan. So you're coming to America from another culture into our culture, and we've got American freedom, which was very, very attractive to you and to me and to all of us. But yet we're now mandated masks. And how do you see this?
Well, let me tell you, it's definitely better than back in Kazakhstan. I still talk to my family on a weekly basis, and I mean, they have penalties and fines that they have to pay if they're not wearing a mask walking outside.
So I keep forgetting this is worldwide. People have been imposed. These mask requirements have been imposed everywhere.
Correct. Yep. So every time my grandmother walks her dog, she has to wear a mask. I mean, right now it's cold, so it's great. It helps, but throughout the summertime, it was horrible.
I wonder if a ski gaiter would qualify as a mask.
Well, you were talking before too, how, when they go on lockdown, I mean, they lock you down block by block with police barricade and don't let you, come back, and they still have the resurgence and things like that going on.
Yep. So it's basically the whole city is divided in, I think, 9 little areas. And each one was locked down, and you had to, each area will have their own stores and all of that, of course, but you weren't able to walk from area 1 to area 2 without any actual urgency and, actual emergency that you have to go there.
Well, and they locked down New Zealand and Australia almost as tightly. So, what I'm hearing, and I agree with your assessments, is we've adapted. We're doing new things, and many of us are thriving. But yeah, we still, I think we got to get out from under this government mandated lockdown. But
Hallelujah, brother.
I don't see how
Yeah.
quite. Let's run the risks of being prognosticators here. I mean, it's the beginning of 2021. How do you guys see this mask or this lockdown unfolding, and how quickly can we go back to the new normal?
I think that one key thing that happened a couple of weeks ago over in Anne Arundel County, Maryland, they ordered the restaurants closed, and the restaurant owners went to court and said, you need to prove that restaurants are causing these cases, right? Because if we're not the cause of it, then we shouldn't be shut down. And the evidence is that only about 2% of the cases are caused by or generated in restaurants. So a judge overruled the county government that wanted to close the restaurants and forced them to let them reopen. So I think one of the big things you're going to see, and I think it's a very good development, is some real, almost street fighting type battles over civil liberties, and what is the extent of our rights, and what is the extent of government's power to do things like this to us, under the rubric of it being an emergency, and what constitutes an emergency, and are we still in an emergency? And I think all those questions are about to get a fair hearing, and it's way overdue.
I think, Brian, to follow up on that, I think you look across the board, you look at the election, the political stories that we've watched this year, and COVID. And I think there's a whole lot of, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. And
Yeah.
I think that's where people are, where they're not going to be pushed down by the government anymore. They realize that they don't have to be forced to do this. And so just in those, whether it's local government or the federal government, people aren't going to sit around and just say, okay, if you say so. They're going to fight back.
I think it's a day, it's like the biggest threat is fear. Nobody makes a good decision when it's based in fear. And I think you got this kind of widespread fear going on, whether there's truth in things or not. Like, I mean, you see Britain says, oh, there's a new strain, and everybody freaks out all of a sudden, like, oh my God, we're going to be here for the next, however many years, or it's going to keep coming back and again. And you think you'd be very conscientious of what decisions are being made based on, this fear that may or may not have a basis behind it.
Well, government lives on fear. And so they see this as an opportunity, but the fact that people have had to live through this is going to be their opportunity to say, no, I don't think so.
We're going to see a level of fighting over this we haven't seen in our whole lives.
Yep.
Well, the government and media lives on fear.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
I mean, even Fox News has fallen into the trap of telling us all the horrible stuff. And somebody mentioned last night, this might last 10 years. I don't think so.
People aren't going to put up for it for 10 years.
So.
Yeah.
You got to look at history. I mean, this has happened before. This is not it's not like this is the first time this has ever happened in human history. I mean, it's actually been a fairly regular occurrence. It's surprising that it didn't happen sooner. So, I don't know if you look at the Spanish flu.
But it is the first time in human history that we've locked down like this.
Yes.
In the face of a virus or whatever. It's always been take the people who are vulnerable, isolate them, protect them, and let everybody else go on living to develop that horrible word, herd immunity. God, I wish we could come up with a better term. And that hadn't happened here. So this is the first time we've locked down worldwide this way. And you look at evidence from places that have had tight mask restrictions and those that have had almost none. And there's no evidence that the mask reduced the incidence of the illness. Matter of fact, there's some evidence that it might even be less likely to get it if you're not wearing masks.
I think fundamentally people will stop, sitting in their corners and not expressing their opinions anymore, like we saw it during the election. And I think that's going to continue on because people are done. They're fed up with not being heard. And I think it will continue, and we'll see more people actually joining the ranks of those who care.
Well, this could be, and here's a real silver lining from me, the silver lining guy. This could be a new birth of freedom.
Right.
People recognizing that they've got to assert their rights to be free, and that's a very good thing.
Yeah, you're going to have to go defend it, right? It's been sort of a given, like all of our lives. Everyone that's on here right now, the length of our lives, it's been given that we are free, and now it's been challenged in a way that it has not been before. And so, you're starting to see, like the Anne Arundel County, you're starting to see some clawback. Some people say, hey, wait a minute, unless you can prove this is a silver bullet against the disease, then you're encroaching on rights you don't have the power to encroach on.
What do you think happens to the churches? I've been disappointed that they've kind of just rolled over under these mandates, and I think our right to assemble to practice our religion is such an essential.
Well, I think the same group of people that you're talking about are going to wear masks forever, are not going to go back to church. There's people, we were talking about this the other day. There are people that we have not seen at our church since March. They can't risk going inside the church, and they're you'll just not see them at church anymore.
Yeah, but how many people are going to church now because of this virtually that have not gone to church before? And so, I mean, if there is an upside to that situation, it is that churches had to figure out how to be virtual, and they possibly are reaching a new audience that they have not been able to reach before. So
I've read an article just recently where one of the parishes was talking about it, and that so many churches went online. Actually, majority of them went online, and they see people that they've never seen in the building itself,
right.
and might never see them. But as long as that continues on, being online streamed when the lockdown is off and we're all back to normal, they might be still going, although they will never show up at the building.
Yeah. Like another thing on that, though, the other side of that is the governor of Virginia, he increased our lockdown a few weeks ago. One of the things he said, he goes, "Hey, you don't have to be in a church to worship." It's like, you know what? I don't need advice from you, Mr. Governor, about where I need to go worship. Right? I have the right to do
I don't
that.
need to be in a church to worship, but if I want to be,
yeah,
you don't get to tell me no.
That's correct.
Well, this is you're as I said, you're making me feel like this was all a very good thing, and that except for those 40 million small businesses.
The way I look at it, Bill, I look at it like war. Out of every war comes some amazing technology and amazing advances. Horrible situation that you would never want to see happen ever in your life or anybody's life. I wish we could all get rid of war. But unfortunately, to this date, it's a fact of life. But you know what? A lot of really cool things come out of the other side of it. And if you can focus on some of those things, there is at least a small upside.
I'm just watching us all on Zoom now. The workplace is going to change. I'm not sure I want to own office buildings in Manhattan.
Yeah.
But you look at what we're doing right now. We've got 6 of us on the line here, and we're a workplace right here, and we're creating something, and we're all in different states and different places, and that's in some ways I think we're more effective in this mode that we might be trying to get to one place to sit in a room together.
That's true.
Yeah.
And also the thing about the office space, I think you're going to end up with different occupants, and who will occupy those offices in Manhattan. They're not going to knock those buildings down, right? But the rent will price it in a different neighborhood. You'll get a different kind of business using that kind of office space, right? You could be smaller and more agile and be able to afford Manhattan office space now, because the traditional commercial real estate customers are drying up, reducing their footprint, etc.
Well,
we're going to see a pivot there that like you've never seen. I mean, I can't imagine when my lease is up on our radio studios in another 4 years that I'm re-signing the lease for the existing square footage that we have. There's just, I don't need it. This whole thing has created a situation where even if people do need to be in the office, they don't need to be in an office 5 days a week.
Right.
I just don't need this kind of space anymore. And everybody is seeing that right now. And so you're right. Commercial realtors are trying to figure out what their pivot point is going to be.
You'll see, I think you'll see a lot of smaller, like smaller communities, and probably these areas that have been seeing a drain towards the big cities over the past couple decades have a resurgence, because people can suddenly live where they want and still have a good job or still run.
These walkable communities that are, where you can walk to the town square and all the restaurants, they are going to explode. And people are going to be working from home, or like WeWork situations where they have a central office where you go in as needed. Shared space.
Little meeting space going.
Yep.
What Frank said, though, the city I'm from in Louisiana is one of the biggest population losers of the last decade. And part of the reason for that is, creatives have congregated in certain places, and creatives are not congregating there, right? So now you could be a creative person and live in Shreveport, Louisiana. Alexandria, Louisiana, which is even smaller and deeper in the woods, right? Because, if I can turn on my computer and get Zoom up, I can meet with people all over the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, Michael
absolutely.
Porter, the business strategist from Harvard, wrote a book, and part of it was industrial clusters. And he talked about the advantages of Silicon Valley and Hollywood and Wall Street and the places where people have to go physically to collaborate and bounce ideas off of each other. You're right. This may bust up the clusters in a way that that diffuses that talent around the country and makes it a very interesting and lively place. I like that scenario.
Do you
Yeah, it's
also think, Bill, that it could break up the tribalism that those groups create? So the
I do.
Silicon Valley tribalism?
I do. I hope so. I hope
Well,
so.
yeah.
We know
That'd
they're
be nice.
they're a monolith of cultural and political views, and it could break it up. They could get to know people like us.
The monoliths are all in trouble because there's so many ways to challenge ideas now. There's so many new ways to get your view into other people's minds.
Well, back to the Fox News and CNN and versus the podcasts like this, conversations like this are growing, and people are hungry for conversations like this. They don't want to be talked at anymore. They don't want to be spoken to anymore by somebody sitting in a big glass desk in a big expensive studio. They want to have real conversations like this. And I think all of this is creating that situation where you're about to see the CNNs and the Fox Newses really be minimalized, and conversations like this grow and grow and grow like they have been over the last couple of years.
Rich, that was great. Thanks. Brian, that's great. Alona and Frank, very interesting. I think let's keep in mind reconvening to come up with other positive things we can all look forward to. So anyway, thanks everybody for joining, and you and I, we will all be talking soon. Take care.
Thanks for listening. Want more? Be sure to subscribe at thebillwaltonshow.com or on iTunes.